Hello and welcome to Plant CEO. In today's episode, I'd like to welcome David Yeung, founder and CEO of Green Monday, Green Common, and Omni Foods. Welcome, David. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you're in Hong Kong right now, right?
Yep.
In the midst of the lockdown.
Yep. This is unprecedented time. Very obviously difficult for everyone.
So you're doing so much. So we're going to touch on all the things that you're doing within your busy times right now. But let's see if you can take me back. And I think it was like over now 20 years ago that you became vegan. So can you take me back to what led you? What was your inspiration to do that at such an early age?
Well, the simple answer is compassion for animals. I have always had, even when I was a child, I've always had just reservation, especially if I actually see, like in Asia, there are wet markets and, people shop, buy, seafood, fish, obviously meat. And when my mom took me to these markets, I used to just say, please, I don't want to go with her.
Yeah.
And I've witnessed, I've actually witnessed multiple times, like, for example, that, when, let's say we get a fish, and in Asia, it's very typical that, they're actually still swimming, they're in the tank. And then, the customer say, oh, you know what, this one is so fresh. And then let's take that one. And I've witnessed that scene to actually, just take that fish out of the tank. And then obviously the butchering and all of that. And that was a very traumatic experience, even when I was a child. And then fast forward to about 20 years ago, I first of all, this is something that's sitting in the back of my mind for a while. And I'm also a student of Buddhism. To me, Buddhism is not really a religion. It's really just, philosophy and wisdom to live a joyful life. And in Buddhism, the number one, principle is compassion. So compassion to obviously human beings, but all lives in general. And that just makes total sense. If we don't want other people to mistreat us, why would we mistreat other people or other lives? So, and if you want to practice compassion, you don't want to inflict harm, suffering, or even killing on any other life. So that just makes perfect sense. When I digest that, I just thought, yeah, I think enough. To me, the meat or the seafood no longer is the delicious food item, but rather is a life, is a dead animal caused by us, caused by our decision to want to consume them.
And do you feel, especially being spiritual, like a spiritual connection with animals and obviously that compassion and making sure that they have a right to live in a way, and being quite universal in that spiritual law? Did that also drive you, and you practice Zen Buddhism today still?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's the guiding principle. And I absolutely apply that to my, just daily activities and daily decisions. When I encounter setbacks, when I encounter people who are very difficult, just how to, now, doesn't mean you always need to be like the Mr. Nice Guy. Doesn't mean we cannot be angry, but just to think in a more 360 kind of way, think from the other person's point of view.
Can you give me an example of where you've had somebody who's been particularly difficult and how you've dealt with that? Like, I'm reading a book right now on Zen Buddhism, so it'd be really interesting to hear how you're dealing with, setbacks, especially when you relate it to business.
Well, first of all, any business, any CEOs, they would be lying if they just tell you that, hey, they planned this all along and they have this master plan and everything just fall in the way that they plan. That's impossible. So, life and work and business is always a discovery journey. And it's both outside external discovery and inside internal discovery.
Right.
So, the internal side is just, when we make decisions, when we handle ourselves, are we really as right as we think? And actually, chances are more times than not, we are not as right as we think. No matter how confident we are. So it is very important. I think the key that I want to say is it's very important to separate a setback as data. Is data to learn what not to do. So separate the failure at doing a particular thing at a particular time from failure as a person.
Yeah,
It's
very good.
very easy for people to say, oh, you know what, you screwed up. You are such a total failure, right? And then on one hand, you're hurting that person's confidence or even self-esteem. And on the other hand, you also have a lot of doubt. So very important to separate failing at a certain task at a particular time versus failure as a person. I fail every day. Every day I'm failing, but that failing is I'm experimenting, right? I'm trying new, especially in what we are doing, which is we are trying to do something that other people have not done before, like the whole industry as a whole, plant-based, future of food. We are all entering uncharted territories. Collectively, we are blazing new trails. So of course, we're going to have setback, but it's extremely important to think that, this path doesn't work, then let's utilize the data and not to take it personal.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to put it, actually. So back in 2012, you had then created Green Monday, and this is on the back of Paul McCartney here in the UK creating Meat-Free Mondays.
Correct.
So how did that connection with him happen? How did that spur you to create this social enterprise, which is, hugely commendable, actually?
Now I didn't I didn't have the honor to get to meet Sir Paul until recently. In fact, earlier this year, January, I did get to meet him, and I also met his family, his daughters, Mary, Stella. So that didn't happen until relatively recently. But in terms of hearing about Meat-Free Monday, of course, as a plant-based advocate and a plant-based practitioner at that time, the fact that someone with the stature of Sir Paul McCartney to start this, instantly I got excited. Instantly I was inspired. And instantly I want to do more. I want to say, hey, how can I, from Asia, also do something, right? So that was the kind of the backdrop. But then in different ways. Number one, the reason, and this is something I told Sir Paul as well, is meat-free, if we translate that to Chinese, it's not just not eating meat. It literally means no food, like food-free or foodless.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like it's the connotation.
Okay.
So not like not eating meat is the what it implies is no food to eat. So that clearly won't work. We're not trying to ask people not to eat, right?
Yeah.
We're asking people not to eat meat or reduce meat consumption.
Yeah.
So from day one, and this is not a disrespect at all to Meat-Free Monday, but it's simply because of cultural difference that Meat-Free Monday is not going to be a term that will spread, that will be adopted, let alone succeed. So, and then I want to, now, as much as we have this connection and motivation to save animals, but admittedly, not everyone feels that way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it doesn't appeal to them.
Especially in different parts of Asia. Some people think, animals are born for us to eat. Is our right to eat them. Of course, I don't agree with that, but many people think that way. So I want to get away from like a moral debate to something that's much more scientific, which of course, since 2006, United Nations has been talking about livestock as a major polluter in so many ways. Of course, carbon footprint, like greenhouse gas, and at the same time, water pollution, inefficient land use, and a very unsustainable way to feed growing global population.
Yeah.
So all these are very scientific. These are all data-driven, science-driven. Now, of course, you still have the deniers, the climate deniers, but at the end, as long as people are using their logical mind, those are actually facts that you cannot argue. Who can argue that the world is the weather of the world? And now, of course, with the pandemic, our world is clearly sick. I think, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that. So at that time in 2012, I just thought it is very important to make that connection between food and global sustainability. And of course, the one simple word to represent that, one word that can best get in people's mind, and you can imprint this idea in their life. And then slowly, you hope they will adopt the movement. And that's the reason why we call it Green Monday. And then as an entrepreneur with my entrepreneur DNA, I just knew that sustainability must come with innovation. We cannot talk about sustainability without innovation. Otherwise, you are only saying how bad the problem is without at least attempting to offer solutions. So that's why from day one, I knew that if we were to start this, there is the advocacy side, but there has to be the innovation side. And the innovation, of course, required to be a business. Yeah. It's a social business.
And so just in terms of Green Monday, which countries would you say have been the most successful at adopting it, and which country would you like to see have a faster adoption to it?
Because we started this in Hong Kong, so it's not exactly a surprise that Hong Kong turns out to be the most impactful region to adopt Green Monday, because that's where we start. So in terms of years, it has the longest time. Now, Hong Kong has a lot of uniqueness that make it actually very ideal to start this within Asia. So first of all, Hong Kong, of course, is a very international city. East meets West, in the history of Hong Kong, that's the uniqueness, that's the role we play. That's number one. Two is Hong Kong is a very dense city. Things can spread very fast. And Hong Kong, of course, people are super connected with mobile, with technology, with everything. So when people are, educated, forward-thinking, receptive to new ideas, and super connected and dense, unless you're spreading something that really is just not, doesn't resonate with everyone or anyone, right? But if you can get some people to resonate with you and get that snowball to create, right? Then the momentum will generate. And now the quick number is from when we started 8 years ago, which the total vegetarian, vegan, and flexitarian population at that time was less than 5%, to now, and at that time it was mostly for religious reasons. So people who are Buddhists, people who practice maybe a couple of days, the traditional lunar calendar. There are a couple of days that they would eat vegetarian, but other than that, it was absolutely a niche and absolutely a small demographic. And also tend to be the elderly, kind of the older demographic. And then fast forward to today, we are at 34% of Hong Kong who are practicing flexitarianism. And of course, many more full-time vegans and vegetarians now. And so it's a 7-fold increase in a little over 8 years. And so that's remarkable. Today, about 46%, close to half of Hong Kong people have heard of Green Monday, and they are very aware of the message that we are trying to convey, the movement that we are trying to bring people to adopt, right? So Hong Kong is there's no doubt we have created that change and impact in Hong Kong. Now, in terms of the country and region that we hope to make more change, now, I think everyone knows it must be China, because from a sheer population standpoint and consumption standpoint, it's just a massive, massive country. But at the same time, it's also one of the most challenging places to create change. So it's not going to be easy, and it's not like the things that we do in UK, in US, in Japan, in Hong Kong will naturally translate to China. That is probably the biggest misperception of anyone. If they think that, hey, what we are doing, we're succeeding in Germany, we're succeeding in Korea, we're succeeding in wherever, and then we can just bring that into Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, and then, it will naturally flourish. That would be the biggest misperception.
Yeah, I think last year the Chinese government did make some, within the health department, made some goals to reduce meat consumption by 50%. I think it was, I can't remember which year, maybe 2030 potentially, like to reduce the consumption. Do you think this government approach works well, or would work well, in your opinion, as well as what you're doing?
Now, at the end, right, this is not just China, but this is from all countries. I mean, we are talking about, at least if I very much simplify it, there are three stakeholders. There are three stakeholders. Number one is individuals or consumers. Number two is the business sector, particularly since we're talking about food, then the food business, including food companies, restaurants, supermarkets, etc. So the food sector. And then the government. So it's a triangle. Now, for a government to say, hey, everyone eat less meats, that alone doesn't work, because people still need to know, first of all, then what do I eat? You cannot just say, don't do this, right? So that's why this puzzle or this challenge is indeed difficult, is because you need to engage all three. Now, of course, in some countries or economies, a lot of things can happen on a grassroots level that government intervention or government guidance actually may not make a big difference. But in most countries, indeed, government guidance or maybe even an official kind of guideline can go a long way. So it's going to take all three. Now, what you mentioned about the health and food guidance a few years ago in China, that's one element, but I don't think the private sector at that time was offering enough solution. Even today, I don't think we're offering enough solution. So it does require both the private sector and then, of course, the end consumers to catch on.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some countries I feel that are leading the way, like Canada. They've changed their dietary recommendations and guidance to exclude meat and dairy. They didn't say it was vegan or vegetarian, but they slowly just took it out. And now their government pension fund is contributing to investments to companies like Perfect Day, who just did a huge round. So I think that approach helps when there's also forward-thinking governments aligned with the private sector.
Correct. Yep, exactly. So it's going to be a coordinated effort. Governments certainly can take a lead, and that will go a long way. But at the same time, they also cannot do it alone.
And so I guess hence why you've also created your Green Common distribution channel for companies. And so you're distributing various products now. How many products are you distributing, and which products are you having the most success with?
We're distributing hundreds, hundreds of products, and couple of dozens of brands. I'm losing count because every month, every 2 months, there are new brands and new products that are coming into the platform. Now, the exciting thing is, obviously, with so many innovations now, the choices and the variety is there. Food is something that absolutely demands variety. No one eats the same thing 7 days a week, no matter how much they love it. Like someone loves pizza or ramen or sushi or whatever that is, you don't eat the same thing 7 days a week. So in order to to make green common, to really motivate people, empower people to change, selection is a must. Food demands variety. So that's the reason why we have been partnering with so many brands and help them with their distribution and help them with their marketing, branding, strategy into Asia. Now, the most successful one is not a surprise, is Beyond Meat. We have been working with them since 2015. Hong Kong and us, we were the first, to bring Beyond Meat outside of the US. before the UK, before Germany, before Australia, and it turned out, of course, it turned out to be a huge success and paved the way to enter into China and other Asian countries. So, the massive adoption and the success of, Beyond Meat, and then the other brand is Califia, is the oatmeal non-dairy line of products, which also is extremely well received. So these are among the kind of the hero brands of kind of what Green Common is, who Green Common is partnering with. But I can go on and just talk for hours just on all these exciting products and brands.
Yeah, and thinking about a lot of the new companies and like price strategy, when you have smaller companies in the plant-based arena, sometimes they come in with a premium status, and it's kind of like an aspirational brand that they might be sitting in a health food shop, and then they work on getting scale and getting the price down. Do you think that's a good approach in general with brands, maybe from your experience of distributing, or is it always good to, like, from the get-go, have something that's affordable that competes like on like, if not better than meat?
Now, there's nothing wrong with starting a little bit premium to start, especially when indeed the cost of producing the products is higher, when the company is not enjoying economy of scale yet. So both from a business standpoint and from a strategy standpoint, it is understandable. In fact, for any products in the world, when we had the first mobile phone, or first, whatever, computer even, right? It was way more expensive than it is right now. Yeah. So it is the natural evolution of launching new products, particularly new breakthrough products that require R&D, that require a lot of engineering and science behind. However, at the end of the day, we are talking about food. And food, of course, if you want to make an impact, you need to reach the mass. So, encouraging these companies to how to optimize the supply chain is very important. A lot of the costs are not necessarily the food itself, but it's the peripheral, but essential elements like transportation, logistics, storage, handling, middlemen, brokers, etc. Right? So the more we can minimize, or maybe even reduce, eliminate part of that, right? The better. So it's going to be an ongoing process. But once you have volume with any brand or any product, once the volume starts to kick in, usually that's when the big economy of scale starts to happen. So there's no doubt in my mind that globally, with most brands, cost will go down, and that therefore price will go down.
Like in the US, Beyond Meat have launched, their burgers in a 10-pack and at a reduced cost for a temporary period. I think only in the US. I don't think they've done that.
It's only in the US, yeah.
Yeah, and then they're coming out of that in sort of August time. So I think that definitely spears the growth cycle, and it's a good strategic.
That's a very good sign.
Yeah, very good sign. Yeah. So now tell me about Omni Foods / OmniPork, when you started, and I think just the stats are sort of credible in terms of pork, being the most consumed meat on the planet, and spam / luncheon meat being the most consumed product for pork, and obviously in Asia being a huge, outweighing any other countries in terms of consuming those products. So it was a good strategy for you to start with the pork side of that luncheon product of yours. So yeah.
Me being an Asian and living in Asia, I don't want to make it sound overly visionary or insightful. It's kind of like if you live in the US, then of course people eat burgers, right? Of course people eat bacon, duh. So I don't want to make me sound overly insightful. It's like, we have the strategy to think about.
Credit to you.
other people have not discovered.
Yeah.
In Asia, in the whole Asia Pacific region, of course, minus the Muslim countries,
Right.
pork is the most consumed. It's just by far. I mean, it is not even close. So North America, of course, beef and chicken, right? Very obvious. Pork is a distant third. But in Asia, pork is the by far number one. And in fact, if you go back to 40, 50, and then longer years before, beef was absolutely not a staple when it comes to meats. No, beef was not a regular diet in Chinese or many of the Asian countries' history.
But it is trending now. Still, it is.
Well, it is trending because
everywhere.
of popular how popular Western fast food chains. I don't have to name them. Everyone knows who they are. But the mass adoption of Western diets and Western fast food obviously make beef take off. So beef, of course, is becoming very, very popular. But still, compared to pork, I mean, pork is staple. Is every family, it's just what they eat. They don't even have to think, right? It's just, this is what they eat. It's kind of like eating rice for Asians, is that you don't think, either rice or noodles, right? But pork is pork. So when we decide, I mean, whatever we do, it is about impact, right? It is about bringing change. So on one hand, we are partnering with all these outstanding, remarkable companies and brands and introducing them to Asian customers. But on the other hand, we also need to think about what's the gap. What are the items that are not yet developed or not yet thought about by some of these companies? And again, this is not exactly rocket science. It's that, I don't believe that, an American company will prioritize making a dumpling, for example. Again, this is not a criticism. It's just that, of course, they have so many things to develop. Why would they develop a dumpling? Okay. Not that making a dumpling is necessarily more difficult or less difficult. I'm just saying from a priority standpoint. So for us to fill that gap and to cater to the local demographics, then we need to develop the meat alternative that most Asians consume, and that's why we came up with OmniPork.
So in the UK, there was a lot of people who've been stockpiling spam, for example, and putting it as part of their cupboards and over allocating their numbers for that. It's for during this pandemic, actually. So did you see a similar trend happening with your product as well?
Well, people are stocking up. Now, in fact, globally, as much as they are stocking up on spam, real spam, but people are also stocking up on almond milk, oat milk, Beyond Burger, and OmniPork in the case of Asia. So people, obviously, because of pandemic, they're cooking and eating much more at home. They have no choice but to stay home, many of them. So we are seeing this year, ironically, although no one wants to see a pandemic of this scale to happen, but the end result is that people become much more conscious and they become much more aware about their food choice. And many of the practices within the meat industry are now exposed in terms of, just how fragile, how vulnerable, and many of the problems are now exposed. So both end consumers and food industry players are realizing that they finally are getting this huge wake up call that now they understand why alternative is so important. This is not just about the tree huggers, the vegan niche demographic anymore. This is about food sustainability. This is about just how to feed the planet. We are not able to feed the planet if we rely on the risky practice of animal farming.
Yeah, totally. And just thinking like the other day I spoke to a guy who's based out in Chicago, back of the yard, ALDI Sciences, and they've actually taken over an old meat processing plant that was closed over a decade ago. And now they've got their lab set up and they're extracting protein from algae. So it's funny how that karma goes around for that new generation of food technology.
Right. Well, this is a mega tipping point opportunity for food industry, for people like us who want to make the change, and at the same time, the change needs to happen. It's not just us trying to convert the world or nudge the world to a more plant-based paradigm, but really, I mean, we actually have no choice. So yes, I mean, this is a window, and indeed, it is exciting. And for existing meat or dairy players, I mean, again, they can pivot too. I mean, by all means, it's not like they can pivot, and they can also find a way to get into this new consumer paradigm. And many of them, in fact, are doing that right now. So it is exciting time, and it's full of opportunities.
You had great success with Starbucks last year, launching into mainland China, I think. How's that partnership going, both, I guess, with OmniFoods and Beyond Meat?
Now, we launched it actually this year in April. So we have been planning for this since last year. So, and we would have launched probably sooner if not for the pandemic. Right. But we did launch it in April, and it created huge buzz. And of course, for a chain of 4,000 plus outlets in China to offer, plant-based milk and also plant-based meat in the ready-to-eat is a massive step. So I really commend the Starbucks China team for really kind of championing this. And also thinking about long term. They are not doing this on a limited time offer. They are incorporating this as a long term strategy and also long term offering. So I commend them for that.
And I think you also with Taco Bell. That was that a trial? Was that last year?
That was late last year, and also we also did another trial this year. That was more of a limited time offer. Because Taco Bell in China is still relatively small in terms of numbers of shops. Okay. So they were eager to try it right before Christmas and during Christmas, I think, as a kind of seasonal offer. And then we also did another round of promotion. But that also create a lot of positive feedback.
That's good. I think obviously that would have a much bigger impact if they were to do this in the States, right?
Well, I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm sure some brand or somebody is talking to them right now, and maybe who knows? Maybe next week there'll be the big news coming out of Taco Bell US.
We hope so. And then the new one is Lidl.
Yes, ALDI.
Sorry, ALDI. Sorry. ALDI is the new one, right? And which countries are they in?
It's in China. So we are very excited with this partnership because ALDI as a group, I mean, they are known to kind of push the boundary and be more of a leader, even if it means trying new things for sustainability and for kind of just community overall. So of course in Europe and then in the US and even in Australia, I mean, that's kind of the ethos, right? That's their thesis. So we are very glad to partner with them and develop now 5 menu items that are ongoing on the menu. And one is a Thai dish, one is a Vietnamese dish, one or two, I think, are Western. And the other one I think is fusion. So anyway, it's a good balance of Asian and Western choices.
Was that co-developed with them together as their products? Because normally they making their own range of products as well, right? So
now we, of course, when we go in, just like any brands, I mean, we do a lot of demos. We do a lot of recipe development, and then they come in with their inputs. So it's kind of collaboration and co-creation. But of course, at the end, since those are the ones offered at their outlets, so they are the ones who make the final call on choosing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over let's say 6 to 10. So ultimately, it's their choice. But I really and indeed, for all the people who have tried it, I mean, they were very impressed and they like how just the whole total package, how it is done.
moving to the other division that you have, which is your Green Monday Ventures, where yourselves are investing in new startups. It'd be great to give me a snapshot of some of those companies, and also hear which ones that you personally are really excited about.
Right. Now, the reason why we have Green Monday Ventures is that we want to have an impact investment arm that can, when we say we want to partner with a company, it's not just lip service, or it's not just, you know, a short-term thing. We are in this for the long haul. We're in this for the super long haul. As long as our planet has all these problems, I think we got a lot of work to do. So we're in this for the long haul, and there's no better way to express that than to say, you know what, I truly believe in the management and the founders, the founders and management of a company, and believe in their vision. So we start the first investment from 5 to 6 years ago was Beyond Meats. That was honestly way before Beyond Burger was launched, way before Beyond Meats becomes the superstar that it is on a global stage. But I really admire Ethan. I really have a lot of respect for him and his team. And just when we sat down, it was, you know, so much in common. You know, we resonate in so many ways. So I told him, and I told his team that, you know, we would do our best to represent their brand, and also we believe in the long-term, you know, vision and mission of their company. So over the years, we have invested in Perfect Day that you mentioned earlier. We have invested in Califia, and most recently, a company out of Singapore called Turtle Tree Labs, which is a biotech company using cell-based technology to create mammal milk, whether it's cow's milk or even human milk. So that is a, you know, just a fascinating breakthrough. And they most recently even they won a huge prize from the Singapore government. So yes, I mean, these are among the very exciting market leaders or category leaders in their respective categories.
And so where do you see now your vision of all the things you're doing, but I guess more on the food side? Do you feel that you will also go the potential IPO route with Omni Foods as a separate entity? Or
the Green Monday Group has Green Monday Foundation, which is our nonprofit, and that is every day we are driving the movement. We are doing advocacy all across the world. So that's the foundation. Holdings is our own business. So Green Monday Holdings, and under Holdings, we have Green Common, we have Omni Foods. And then Green Monday Ventures is our kind of VC arm. So altogether, those are the three major entities: Ventures, Holdings, and Foundation. And then for each of the for-profit arm, based on the nature of their business, there is a fixed percentage of income that will go back to nonprofits. So now, of course, the fund, the structure of the fund, of course, is different from the structure of a business. So the allocation is not identical, but there is a fixed portion of income that will go to nonprofit. So altogether, whether it's for profit, nonprofit, actually what we are doing is this total ecosystem that is trying to drive change. So, you know, whether you call it social venture, mission-driven venture, that's the overall group. And we are very lucky that, you know, when I drew up the blueprint, you know, 8 years ago, that was a very aggressive and almost impossible, you know, plan, especially at that time when no one in Asia was talking about this. I mean, I really mean no one. I mean, people absolutely thought we were nuts, that I was nuts. Actually, maybe I'm nuts. Who knows?
Could be a little bit crazy.
Not that I don't want to, again, I don't want to sound like, you know, I was predicting these, you know, crises to happen. But when you look at the science, and I study engineering, I'm a science guy. So when you look at the science, when you look at the data, you just knew that it doesn't add up. With our global population, you know, exploding, with the way we're feeding the world, climate change, greenhouse gas, everything, it just, I mean, this bubble is bound to burst. our ecosystem is bound to collapse. Our food system is bound to collapse. Now, of course, I could not predict whether it's called African swine fever or COVID-19. Of course, those things I could not predict. But on a macro trend, actually, that is not unpredictable. So now, sadly, we are at that collapse point right now. So I think the urgency for everything we are doing right now. Now, the reason, for example, even with this interview or with this sharing, I should say, to me, it's not about just telling my story. To me, it is about spreading awareness and also, hopefully, bringing more people into this circle in terms of daily diet choice. Or maybe if they join the movement, if they join as an entrepreneur, maybe they join as an investor, just channel more resources and energy into this, because the world change must happen. It's not a choice.
That's fantastic. So yeah, really amazing, all the things that you're working on, and again, very commendable. And I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully get to speak again soon.
Yep. So look forward to meeting you in person, and let's hope that will be sooner than later.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Bye.